They told me the town was empty. They lied. My name is Madison Clark. I'm 34 years old and I sell houses no one wants anymore. Abandoned farmsteads, foreclosure wrecks, forgotten coastal towns eaten by salt and fog, those are my clients. 3 weeks ago, my company sent me to a place I'd never heard of. Greyview, Maine. A town that doesn't appear on GPS anymore, though its pin still lingers like a ghost in outdated maps. I was supposed to inspect a stretch of oceanfront property, take photos, and report back. Easy money, they said. 1 night at most. When I drove in, the fog was already waiting. Thick and heavy, pressing against the windshield like it wanted to look inside. My phone lost signal 10 minutes before the city limit sign appeared, faded blue metal with peeling paint. Welcome to Greyview population. The number was scratched out. I remember thinking, who cares? I'd seen worse towns. I was tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Just wanted to finish the job and get home. The main street looked preserved, almost staged. Storefronts intact, windows clean. A diner with a closed sign hung crookedly, its blinds half lowered. A barber shop. A post office. Everything looked ready to open for business, except no one was there. No wind. No birds. Not even the sound of waves, though I knew the ocean was less than a mile away. I parked in front of a small 2-story house, the one on my list, and turned off the engine. That's when I heard it. A faint clink like a metal wind chime followed by laughter. A child's laughter. It came from somewhere behind the house. But when I checked, there was nothing. Just a swing set half buried in sand and seaweed, moving gently though the air was still. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and damp wood. Too clean for a place that had been abandoned for 30 years. The table was set for 2. A cup of coffee sat there, half full. Still warm, I laughed nervously. "Cute prank," I said out loud, like the walls might answer. I unpacked my camera, started taking photos for the listing. Kitchen, living room, upstairs bedroom. Each shot looked perfect, except when I checked the display, the photos were off. Tiny things. Curtains drawn in one picture, open in the next. A chair moved slightly. And once, a faint shape behind me near the doorway. By evening, I told myself I was imagining things. I made some tea, sat near the window, and wrote down my report notes. House in better condition than expected. Possibly used recently. No residents located yet. Then, as I closed my laptop, something flickered outside. A light. In the house across the street. It glowed for a few seconds, then went dark. I thought maybe someone else had come back to Greyview. Maybe I wasn't alone here after all. But later that night, I replayed one of my photos and noticed something I hadn't before. In the reflection of the kitchen window, there was a figure standing in the yard. Still, watching. And I swear to God, it looked exactly like me. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection, my own face, standing outside in the dark, staring back at me through the kitchen window. By morning, the fog had swallowed the town again. Pale, heavy, motionless. I told myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a trick of the glass, maybe a double exposure on the camera. That's what I kept repeating as I brewed another cup of coffee, pretending the taste of metal wasn't real. I decided to check the second property, the house by the sea. It was the one my supervisor was most interested in. Potential value if restored, he'd said. The address was handwritten, almost illegible, like someone hadn't wanted it to be found. The road wound downward through dead trees and broken fences until I reached the shore. The ocean stretched out in front of me, gray and endless. The house sat right on the edge of the cliff, old Victorian style, still standing proud, windows sealed with boards. Except one. The top left window was open, curtains moving slightly, though there was no wind. Inside, the smell of salt and decay was stronger. The wallpaper peeled in long curls like old skin. Footprints, small, barefoot, led from the entrance toward the living room. There was a fireplace, cold for decades, and above it a family photograph. A man, a woman, a little girl. Their eyes looked painted over with something dark, almost black. I felt dizzy. Maybe it was the smell or the sound of faint humming, like a refrigerator running somewhere in the distance. Only there was no power here. In the kitchen, I found dishes neatly stacked, all spotless. One plate was still wet, as if washed a moment ago. I called out, "Hello, anyone here?" Silence. Then the faintest reply, a whisper echoing from upstairs. "Coming!" My throat went dry. I froze at the foot of the staircase. Every step creaked softly, like the house was breathing beneath me. The upstairs hallway stretched longer than it should have. 4 doors on each side, identical. The open window I'd seen from outside was at the far end, white curtains fluttering slow, rhythmic, like lungs expanding and collapsing. I walked toward it, heart hammering. The whisper came again, closer this time. "You came back." I spun around. Empty hall. But when I looked down, I saw something on the floor, a small toy boat, carved from wood, rocking gently in a puddle of seawater that had no source. Then I heard footsteps, light, quick, behind one of the closed doors. I raised my voice. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the faint creak of the floorboards shifting weight. I took one cautious step closer, reached for the doorknob and stopped. Because under the door I could see a shadow. Small, child-sized. It moved once, then froze. And for a moment, I could swear I heard breathing shallow, patient, almost synchronized with mine. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, trying to keep my voice steady. "All right," I whispered. "I'm leaving now." The shadow didn't move. I turned and hurried down the stairs, the sound of my own steps echoing too loudly. When I reached the door, I felt it, a sudden gust of wind from nowhere, slamming it shut just as I touched the handle. The house trembled, wood groaning like something deep inside was waking up. Then, just as quickly, it went silent again. Outside, the fog had thickened. I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. But when I looked up toward the cliff, that open window I'd left behind me was now closed. And in the glass, faint and unmistakable, was a reflection of a small girl smiling, waving at me from the inside. I don't remember driving back to town. One moment I was standing by the cliff, staring at that closed window, and the next, I was parked in front of the same 2-story house I'd spent the night in. I checked the time. 4:17 p.m., but the sky looked darker, like twilight was coming early. The fog was thicker now, clinging to the houses, turning everything into silhouettes. My phone still had no signal. When I opened the map app, the blue dot that marked my location spun wildly, like it couldn't decide where I was. I needed to find someone. Anyone. The first place I tried was the diner. Its sign still blinked faintly, one dying bulb struggling against the gray. The door opened easily, and for a second I felt relief. Inside, the air was stale, but not dusty. Chairs perfectly aligned, menus stacked, a half-eaten slice of pie left on the counter as if someone had just stepped outside. And then I saw her. A woman sitting in the far booth by the window. She wore a pale blue waitress uniform, hands folded neatly on the table, staring straight ahead. "Ma'am," I called softly. She didn't move. I walked closer, heart pounding. Her skin looked almost waxy. But when I stepped into the booth's shadow, she blinked once and slowly turned her head toward me. Her eyes were wrong, clouded like she'd been underwater too long. "You're not supposed to be here," she said quietly. I froze. "I'm with thee," but before I could finish, she smiled. Not a kind smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "None of us live here anymore," she whispered. "We just remember." A chill ran through me. "What does that mean?" She tilted her head slightly, like listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, still smiling, she said, "He's coming." A loud crash echoed from the kitchen, metal hitting tile. I jumped back, knocking over a chair. When I looked toward the sound, the lights flickered. For a split second, I saw shapes moving, silhouettes behind the counter, bending and jerking like broken puppets. And then the lights went out. I ran. Through the door, into the fog, the sound of footsteps following just long enough to make me question whether they were real. Back on the street, everything was darker, the air colder. My breath came out in short, white bursts. I turned a corner and stopped dead. There were people there now, dozens of them, standing silently in the road. Men, women, children, all perfectly still, all staring at me. Their clothes were old-fashioned, faded. Some of them looked burned, others soaked. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then one of them, a man with hollow eyes and a long coat, stepped forward. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. "I've never been here before," I whispered. He shook his head slowly. "You forgot." Then they all turned at once, like birds following an invisible signal, and walked away, vanishing into the fog. I stood there, shaking. Every instinct told me to leave, to get in my car and drive until the road ran out. But when I looked back toward where I'd parked, my car was gone. Only tire marks remained, leading back toward the cliffs. By the time I made it back to the house, it was almost dark. The streetlights were flickering, but not from power, from something else. The glow wasn't electric. It pulsed, faintly alive, like veins of light beneath old glass. I didn't remember unlocking the door, but when I touched the handle, it swung open on its own. The air inside was colder now. Damp, heavy, breathing with the rhythm of the ocean. I shut the door, pressed my back against it, and tried to think. My car was gone. The people, or whatever they were, had vanished. My only chance was to wait for daylight. But the clock on the wall read 3:12 a.m. I blinked. It couldn't be. The sun had barely set an hour ago. I tapped the glass face. The second hand ticked once, then stopped completely. That's when I heard it, a sound so soft I almost missed it. A slow, rhythmic knock. Coming from the floor, I froze. It was faint, hollow, like someone tapping wood from underneath. Once. Pause, twice, pause, and then a whisper. "Madison!" Every muscle in my body locked. The voice was small, almost childlike, the same tone I'd heard in the house by the sea. I backed away, staring at the floorboards. The sound followed my steps. Wherever I moved, it followed the whisper just beneath me. "Don't leave again." I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it toward the floor. Dust floated lazily in the beam, nothing there. Still, the whisper continued. "You left us here." "I don't know you," I whispered back, shaking. "I've never—" "You promised." The last word hit like a cold breath across my neck. I spun around, but no one was there. The flashlight flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. I scrambled for my phone, but the screen refused to turn on. Somewhere beneath me, the floor creaked, slow, deliberate, like someone crawling. I pressed my ear against the boards. I don't know why, curiosity maybe, or denial. And I heard it clearly this time, the sound of fingernails scratching from below. Then a voice, louder now, urgent, almost desperate. "Help me!" I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The scraping grew faster, harder, wood splintered. I could see the boards bending upward, something pushing through. I grabbed the nearest thing, a lamp, and swung it against the floor. The base cracked, but the noise stopped. For a few seconds, everything was still. Then, faintly, I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, uneven. Whoever it was, they were moving from one room to another, dragging something heavy across the floor. I forced myself up the stairs, one hand gripping the railing. The air grew colder with every step until I could see my breath. The hallway was dim, the wallpaper curling at the edges like it was trying to escape the walls. One of the bedroom doors was open, the same one I'd seen yesterday. Inside, the furniture had been rearranged. The bed pushed aside. The floorboards there were different, newer, nailed down hastily. I crouched, shining the weak beam of my dying flashlight across them. Something dark seeped between the cracks, not liquid, not quite. More like shadow bleeding upward. I leaned closer and heard the voice again, right below me. "He's not gone." Then a single, sharp knock from under the floor, followed by silence so thick it pressed against my ears. I stayed there, frozen, until dawn crept pale through the window. When the light finally reached the boards, the dark stain was gone. But the word hello was carved there now, fresh, jagged, and still warm to the touch. When the sun finally rose, it looked wrong. Too pale, too thin, like the light was dying before it reached the ground. I hadn't slept. My hands still trembled from the night before, from that voice under the floor, from the word carved into the boards that hadn't been there yesterday. I packed my things in silence, planning to walk along the coast until I found a road out. No car, no signal, just the sound of waves somewhere beyond the fog. The town looked different in daylight. Buildings that had been empty now had curtains drawn, faint movement behind the glass. Shadows that didn't belong to anything visible. The ocean's voice guided me, that slow, constant murmur, until I reached the cliffs again. And there it was, the lighthouse. I hadn't noticed it before. Tall, skeletal, its white paint stripped away by salt and time. The light at the top flickered once every few seconds, not a warning but a pulse, like a heartbeat. A small sign at the base, almost unreadable. Keeper's house. Do not enter the door was unlocked. Of course it was. Inside, dust swirled in long ribbons of gray light. A single staircase spiraled upward, narrow and steep. I could hear faint footsteps echoing above me, slow and deliberate. "Hello," my voice cracked. "I just need help." No reply, but the footsteps stopped. Halfway up, I found the keeper's room. A narrow bed, a wooden desk, a stack of yellowed logbooks. On the wall hung a map of Greyview, smaller, tighter than any modern map, showing streets I hadn't seen and buildings that didn't exist. One of the entries in the logbook caught my eye. October 9th, 1987, the fog won't leave. They say the sea took them, but I can still hear their voices under the floor. He promised to keep the light burning until they find their way home. My throat tightened. October 9th, the same date I'd arrived in town. Then a sound above, a chair scraping slowly across wood. I climbed the final steps to the top. The light room was empty, except for an old lantern in the center, glowing with that same pulse I'd seen from below. Next to it stood a man, facing the window, his back to me, tall, still, wearing a dark coat that looked soaked through. "Sir," I said carefully, "are you the keeper?" He didn't answer at first. Just turned his head slightly, enough for me to see part of his face, pale, hollowed, with a faint shimmer like sea foam. "I keep the light," he said, voice slow, distant. "That's what they asked of me." I took a step closer. "Do you know what's happening here? There are people." He cut me off. "They're not people anymore." I froze. He turned fully now, and I saw that his eyes were empty, not blind, but vacant, filled with the color of the fog itself. "They come when the light falters," he said. "When someone new arrives, they remember what they were. They follow the sound of breathing." I didn't know what to say. The room felt smaller, colder. My heartbeat echoed too loudly. He pointed toward the window. "Look!" I stepped beside him. Below, the fog had thinned just enough to reveal the shoreline, and there they were. Dozens of figures walking along the beach, half submerged in the surf. Moving in slow, unnatural rhythm like the tide controlled them. "They're waiting," the keeper whispered. "For you." "Why me?" I managed. "Because you came back." Before I could speak again, he reached out and touched my shoulder. His hand was freezing, not skin, but water pretending to be skin. "The light will go out soon," he said. "And when it does, you'll remember too." Then he turned away, and the lantern beside him flared once, blinding white. When my vision cleared, he was gone. The room was empty, the lantern dark, and far below I heard the first voices rise with the tide, calling my name. I ran from the lighthouse until my legs gave out. Down the cliff path, through the sand, past the broken signs and half-buried fences. The fog followed, not rolling this time, but moving like it had purpose. When I reached the main street, everything had changed again. The buildings were whole now. The diner glowed with neon, the barber shop's door was open, and I could hear faint chatter, laughter, music, the sound of life. It was night again. Or maybe it had never stopped being night. I stood in the middle of the street, heart pounding. The air smelled like coffee and rain. People walked past me, normal people, smiling, talking, not the hollow-eyed ghosts from before. A man brushed my shoulder, muttered, "Watch it," without even looking up. For a moment, I almost cried from relief. But then I noticed something wrong. No one looked at me, not once. They moved around me like I wasn't really there. I walked into the diner. The same booth, the same pie on the counter, except now it was steaming fresh. The waitress stood behind the counter, humming softly. She looked up and smiled. "The usual, Maddie." My chest tightened. "What did you call me?" She frowned, confused. "Honey, you feeling okay?" I sat down slowly, staring at her. She looked younger now, alive, warm. The name tag read Claire. I whispered, "How do you know me?" She laughed softly. "Sweetheart, you grew up here." The room swayed. My throat closed. "No, I didn't. I've never..." Something slammed behind me, a door shutting hard. The music stopped. When I turned back, the diner was empty again. No waitress, no customers. Just that same slice of pie, rotting, covered in mold. I stumbled outside. The town was dead once more. The fog had returned, thicker than ever. And yet I could hear the laughter still, muffled, distant, like a memory playing on loop. Then the church bell rang. The sound echoed through the streets, too loud, too heavy. I followed it, drawn like I had no choice. The church sat at the far end of town, tall, cracked, its steeple bending slightly toward the sea. The doors were open. Inside, candles burned in uneven rows, their flames bending toward the altar. And behind the altar, a wall of photographs. Hundreds of them. Old portraits, school pictures, newspaper clippings, all faces of people who had once lived here. And in the center, pinned higher than the rest, was mine. I stared at it, my own face younger, smiling, eyes full of light I didn't remember ever having. The caption beneath read, "Madison Clark missing since October 9th, 1987. The same date again. I backed away, shaking my head. "No, that's not possible." But the air shifted, heavy and wet, and the candles flickered as if exhaling together. Voices whispered from all sides now, soft, overlapping, too many to count. "You left. You promised you'd stay. The sea remembers." I covered my ears, but the voices only grew louder, clearer, forming one sentence in perfect unison. "It's your turn to keep the light." And suddenly I was standing on the shore again. The lighthouse blazed in the distance, its beams sweeping across the water. Something cold brushed against my ankle. Then another. Hands. Dozens of them, reaching from the surf, pale, silent, pulling me toward the sea. I screamed, but no sound came out. The fog swallowed my voice, my breath, my shape. As the tide rose around me, I looked back once at the town glowing faintly behind the mist. And in every window, I saw my own reflection, waving goodbye. The sea took me. Or maybe I walked into it myself. I can't remember anymore. When I opened my eyes, everything was silent, not underwater, but beneath something heavier than water. A darkness that breathed. I could see shapes moving far above, ripples of light, the faint shimmer of the surface. But no sound reached me, no heartbeat, no voice, only the slow pulse of the tide. Then, faintly, I heard the bell again, the one from the church, ringing deep through the current, pulling me upward like a command. I gasped when I broke through. The air was thick, sour, and the sky had no color at all. Only the lighthouse stood ahead of me, burning with a steady, unnatural glow. I dragged myself onto the rocks, clothes heavy with salt. The door to the lighthouse was open, waiting. Inside, the steps were dry, perfectly dry, as though no water had ever touched them. My footprints disappeared as soon as I made them. At the top, the lantern was lit again, and someone was standing beside it. The keeper. Only this time, he didn't turn when I entered. He just stared out toward the horizon, hands clasped behind his back. I walked closer, shivering. "Why me?" I whispered. "Why did it have to be me?" He finally turned. His face was calm, almost kind, the eyes pale and endless. "It was always you," he said. "You promised you'd keep the light." I shook my head. No, I didn't, he raised a hand. You did, a long time ago, before the storm, before the sea forgot the names of the living. He stepped closer, and I saw it then. His face wasn't a face anymore. It was mine. The same eyes, the same mouth, the same scar beneath the chin. No, he smiled my smile, hollow and resigned. The light must never go out, he said, or they'll find their way in. He took my hand, cold as stone, and pressed it against the lantern. It pulsed once beneath my palm, and I felt something enter me, a weight, a rhythm, a whisper that wasn't mine. The keeper stepped back. Now you remember. And as he spoke, his body began to dissolve, threads of fog unraveling into the air, leaving only the echo of his words. I tried to move, but my feet were rooted to the floor. The lantern grew brighter, flooding the room with white. I screamed not from pain, but from the realization that I knew this place. I had been here before, in another time, another life. The beam of the lighthouse turned, slow and steady, casting light over the town. Through the window, I saw Greyview below, quiet, drowned in mist. But in every house, a figure stood by the window, watching, waiting. Their faces were familiar. The waitress, the man from the street, the little girl by the swing. And when the light passed over them, they vanished, leaving only their reflections in the glass. The sea roared once, low and final. I turned back to the lantern, the hum vibrating through my bones now. The voice came again, not from outside, but from within me. Keep it burning, Madison. I looked down. My hands were no longer shaking. They were steady, pale, translucent. The fog pressed against the windows, whispering in words I almost understood. I knew, suddenly, that the next traveler would come. Someone else, tired, lost, just like me. And when they did, the light would flicker again. It always does. I looked out over the sea one last time. The horizon glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And I whispered, the way the keeper once had, "Welcome to Greyview. No one lives here anymore."